Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me just say that we get it. Personal development can be hard, but you don't have to do it alone. Project Endure has been on a mission to create a supportive and inspiring community of people, all striving to be better together. Head down to the link in the show notes and join the Hard Things Club so that we can do hard things together. And if you're already a member, invite a friend and spread the love. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 165. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and in the great state of Pennsylvania, we have a very, very, very special guest, Andrew Linder. Andrew, how are you, man?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while now, and I'm so happy that we're finally able to make it happen. Before we jump into anything, I would love if you could introduce yourself to the people listening without giving away what I imagine we're going to talk a lot about on this podcast.
Yeah. So my name's Andrew Linder. I'm from Bensalem, Pennsylvania, right? The suburbs of Philadelphia. Grew up there. And I really just played sports my whole life. Sports was like a really big component in my family. Like my mom and dad both really into sports, both my sisters, and we're just a very competitive family. So that kind of like drove us, and that's how we stayed out of trouble growing up, was our parents just keeping us locked into playing different sports and doing that stuff on the weekends. So we couldn't be out, misbehaving, more so me than my sisters. And that just like transformed. I went to East Stroudsburg University, played college football up there, was a business finance major, and my dream was always to go into federal law enforcement. And, that's what I'm doing right now. I work down in Washington, D.C. for the U.S. Capitol Police, and I'm a law enforcement officer down there. And I like doing hard things in my spare time when I'm off from work.
I love it, man. And you've done a very hard thing, which we'll talk about. But before we talk about what you actually did, I have a question. I put up a poll on Instagram and I got a bunch of questions, but I think this one's kind of hilarious for you to answer without giving away what you did. But do you have all your toenails?
The toe next to my big toe, they're mangled. But besides that, the rest of them are still intact.
Wow. Amazing. Okay. So we're going to dive in, and we're going to dive in with the first question I ask every single guest. And so when you look back at your life so far, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you did not choose for yourself?
I think a big component in my life was actually, and I don't really talk about this often, but was when I was in high school and I was getting ready to play high school football. And the coach pretty much told me that there was zero chance I'd ever play high school football. He told me that I should go choose a different sport, that I would never play on his team. And he said a few words that, we don't need to talk about right now. But that was like one of the biggest like turning moments in my life and hardest things to deal with, because someone that I looked up to, and something that even at a young age, like being in high school, playing football was like my dream. That's all I wanted to do. And to have that kind of taken away from me for a moment, and like him saying, hey, like there's no chance that you can do what you want to do. We don't want you a part of this. Or I don't want you a part of this. And that kind of crushed me at a young age. And, that led to me then ending up transferring high schools. And after I did that, I ended up winning 3 all-conference awards in 2 years. So, it wasn't I did what I had to do there. But in the moment, I kind of felt like everything was taken away from me. And dealing with that was really tough mentally, being a sophomore in high school.
So if you can think back, do you remember the initial wave of emotion or your initial reaction to hearing that from your coach?
I literally left the workout and I was in my Kia Spectra, and like just cried. But I didn't want to like go home and for like my parents to see or anything like that, or wonder why like I wasn't at like training or practice or anything. So then I did that, and then I went right to the field and started running sprints. So it was just like kind of letting all of it out. I did some yelling while I was out there in the field by myself, and kind of just felt like, someone that like I trusted and looked up to kind of betrayed me. And, that was a really hard thing to deal with, having your ego as a sophomore in high school and all that stuff. Yeah, that was a tough one.
Mm. So there's something interesting there. So you didn't hide the emotions, you felt the emotions, it sounds like. And then you didn't just sit with them, you took action. And I think that's a really key thing that a lot of people, have trouble with is I feel this thing and so I'm just going to feel it or I'm going to avoid it altogether, distract myself and do everything in my power not to experience this discomfort. But instead, you felt it and then you did something about it. Has that always been who you are? Or in other words, like why was that your response?
Yeah, I'm a guy wear my emotions on my sleeve, high or low. I really don't try to shy away from them. In that moment, I won't even lie. Like I was like just holding back, trying not to cry. Like why this coach is like yelling at this and telling this stuff to me. So I held it back as much as I could, and then I kind of just let it all out. But even anyone who tells you or knows me today, I call a spade a spade. I definitely get that from my mom, and I definitely show my emotions, good or bad.
Mm. So you get out on the field, you do sprints, you work hard, you transfer schools, you have what sounds like a great high school football career. Is there part of you that's driven that whole time to prove this coach wrong?
Absolutely, even to this day. And that was I'm 27, and that was when I was 16, 11 years ago.
Mm.
Uh, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna make sure that you know that I did it. And I find great pleasure. I mean, I don't think that you should have like a whole wall full of enemies, but if whatever's going to drive you to be that person that you need to be, hey, if there's enemies in that way, choose your enemies wisely and
Mm.
keep moving forward. But yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was fair at the time, and I was really driven to prove to everyone else that like the reason why I wasn't playing there was unfair. And yeah, I think I proved my point there.
Mm. You bring up another interesting point, which is utilizing the enemies, wanting to prove people wrong to your advantage without having a wall full of enemies. Or in other words, being able to hold those maybe more uncomfortable negative emotions and feelings and use them to your advantage without letting them eat you from the inside out. How do you navigate that? Or have you ever thought about how you balance that and protect yourself from the downside of holding on to things that could be negative?
Yeah, I don't honestly look at it as a negative. I mean, in that specific circumstance, yes, there was a lot of negativity around it. But even if I'm chasing something, if I'm going to go maybe run a race, or if I'm, in when I was in the police academy, I was trying to break a an obstacle course record. I had no idea who the guy was that was in first place, but I wrote his name down every day. I was obsessed with trying to break it. There was no like hard feelings towards that guy, but it was like he had something that I wanted, and it just gave me that constant reminder on like, well, why am I getting up at 3:30 in the morning to go run sprints before training, or
Mm.
why am I in the gym? Why am I eating healthy? And you constantly have a reason to go back to. Wait, this is what I'm chasing this. This is what I'm
Mm.
chasing right now. And that's
Mm.
helped me. I don't think that's healthy. It might not be healthy for everybody, but for me, that's driven me, miles.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're very aware of that. When did you become aware of the fact that that's how you operate best? Was it back in high school or has it taken some time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Back in high school, that was usually that moment. I don't think that if I think that had a huge, going to when I was playing in college football and everything, like that moment in high school with that coach, my experience there drove me and kind of taught me, okay, what's going to motivate me to go the extra mile? What's going to motivate me to stay in the gym later, and eat cleaner and do more research and just study more and all the things. So that's kind of that. And it worked for me, and I figured out what worked for me, and I just continue rinse and repeat it, with whatever I'm chasing.
Is it fair to say, or would you say that looking back, that moment of rejection and that challenging, hardest thing you've ever had to handle is also one of the best things that has ever happened to you?
Absolutely. I talk about this a lot with some of my close friends, and I think that allowed me to grow so much because, granted, I've had an easy life. I don't come from a horrible family and everything like that. So going through a situation like where you're told you're not going to be anything in life and you can't do what you want to do and all those things. I mean, that experience right there it really shaped me into who I am today, being able to achieve the things I've been able to achieve.
Mm. So, if you could go back to Andrew in high school in that moment and share one piece of wisdom or guidance or encouragement, what would you tell him at that moment that would help him?
Everything truly happens for a reason.
Mm.
I like to this day in my life, when bad things happen, I try to give myself a 5 minute rule to be upset about it. And then I realize, okay, like, why am I don't know why this happened to me right now, but I know it might not be a year from now. It might not be 2 years from now. It might not be 3 years from now, but there's eventually going to be an answer on why this happened to me. And it's a beautiful thing. So I really don't question things too much. And I just, roll with the punches and keep moving forward. And
Mm.
that was an amazing moment for me
Mm.
in my life.
To just go a step further with what you said, because I agree with everything. I have a tattoo on my wrist and it's of a sprout to remind me that sometimes when you're in a dark place, it feels like you've been buried, but you've actually been planted. And you can't connect the dots looking forward, like you said. What is a hard thought for me, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, is yeah, we might not know why things happened in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, or we might not know why they happened in our lifetime. And that's challenging sometimes, the thought of maybe leaving this earth without knowing why things happened. Do you ever think of that? Slash, do you have a greater perspective or a faith that you tap into that allows you to have a greater perspective?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't try to get all the answers to things, and if they come to me, amazing. But I
Mm.
think the power that I've had is that, not to just like think about things too much, and to really start to just move forward and move on from the whatever the current problem is or the current situation in my life, because I've just realized that just sitting there or just thinking about it constantly, like, it doesn't help you. Like, you have to take action. If you go back to that moment in high school, if I just kind of said, all right, I just stopped playing, and I just kind of sit there and I go to school and I just allow someone else to dictate my life, I literally would not be here talking to you right now. I can promise you that. Who knows what I would be doing right now? My whole life would be entirely different. But something happens to you. Okay, you can be upset about it. I'm not telling you not to be, because you're going to be, right? Be human, right? And then deal with it, though, and then start working on an action plan. How can I make this situation better for me right now? And eventually, hopefully, I get the answer. If not, we're still making progress and moving forward. And I think that's the biggest thing, just trying to get that 1% better and having that mindset towards everything.
Yeah, control what you can and surrender the rest. And it's easy to say, it's hard to do. But I think we get better with practice and repetition when it's intentional. And so, with all that being said, you recently completed a task that many would consider just absolutely insanely crazy. Um, Tell us what it was, and then take me back to the day, the time, the moment where that seed was planted in your mind, where you thought, "Hey, maybe I should do this thing."
Yeah, so on May 18th, I completed my 3,082-mile run from Santa Monica Pier, California to Central Park, New York City, with a 15-pound weighted vest, raising money for human trafficking awareness and human trafficking prevention. And that idea came. I really have started running around in October of 22, so a little bit over a year and a half ago. And I was just, I started running, and I got obsessed with it, and, wanted to chase a sub 3 hour marathon. And then I wanted to do a 12-hour race, which I did in August of last year. And then I want to do a 100-mile race by the end of the year last year, which I did in December. And in that meantime, after my 12-hour race, one of the big things that one of the big goals I had was to raise money for charity. I got interviewed after my sub 3 hour marathon, and they asked me what's next for me. And I said a 12-hour race, a 100-mile race, and raise a ton of money for charity. And I had no idea that running across America was going to be that raising money for charity. Truthfully, if you would have told me I was going to do that, I would have said, you're out of your mind. I'm not doing that. But things just happened, and I just started thinking, oh, what can I do that's bigger? And also with raising money, you have to do something that's going to captivate people, and you got to draw some people in. So I thought the idea, and run across America, saw that no one did it with a 15-pound weighted vest. I also wanted, with the 15-pound weighted vest, I wanted to symbolize the weight that the victims of human trafficking go through every day of their life. I could have worn a 1,000-pound weighted vest. It wouldn't have equaled what they have to go through, but it was just to show them that, hey, we realize that this, just because like you might be out of the situation, doesn't mean you're scot clean and everything is good in your life. We're still rooting for you, we're still praying for you, and we're still hoping that you make progress in your life.
So I have a couple questions, but just so we're clear before we keep moving, is this the hardest thing you've ever done on purpose?
Yes, for the time, for the time, this the 79 days of running and staying locked in, it was mentally was by far the hardest thing that I've done.
Yeah. So take us back then to the game plan, right? Before you started, what were some of the things you thought about, planned for? What was the goal originally?
Yeah, so I kind of did mapped it out quickly. It was like, okay, how many miles is roughly going to be? How much, how many miles do you think I could do a day? And was like, all right, well, we can get this thing done in under 80 days. That was the goal. So we did it in 79 days. And then I just called my friends and I said, hey, this was in August 27th. It was when I thought of the idea. I thought about it while I was at work. And then I started making phone calls while I was on break. And I said, I called Brandon, who was my roommate, my crew chief for all my races. And I said, hey, man, I think we're going to run across America. And we'll start it in March. I think I can get it done in 80 days, and we'll raise a ton of money for charity. And I called Marlon, I called my buddy Chase, and I called my buddy Eric, and I said, hey guys, I said the same conversation to all of them, and they all without hesitation said, let me know what we have to do, I'm in. And now first off, I want to say I would not have gotten close of getting this thing done if it wasn't for those guys. Those four guys are God sent. Those four guys did so much for me to keep me intact throughout the entire time, to put their egos aside, to put their lives aside. People see what I did, and I'll get credit for it all. But those guys had to give up time away from their families for 80 days. They had to put all their time and effort into me and into the mission for 80 days as well. And they don't get any of the credit of, they did this thing where they accomplished running across America. They wanted to do it because they're just amazing human beings. They wanted to support me, and we were all passionate about raising money for charity. So shout out to those guys, because, I would not have gotten this thing done if it wasn't for them. They're amazing.
And I'll just give you this compliment that it's a testament to who you are. And granted, this is our first conversation, but it's testament to who you are, that you had four friends who would drop everything to be there with you. And they sound like incredible human beings as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, they're the best. Love those guys.
So when it came to choosing a charity, how did you land on the cause and on the charity?
Yeah, so the cause was really a no-brainer. The reason why I got into law enforcement was to go after human trafficking. That was something I've been passionate about. That was my passion, to get into law enforcement, because I wanted to go after some of the worst people on the planet. And that's kind of what I identified those people as. I really despise people who take advantage of people, and it just disgusts me. So I wanted to raise money for that. And then I went and interviewed with different charities, and I came across Sisters Rising Worldwide, and I hopped on a call with their CEO and their head of marketing and their VP, and I just fell in love with them. They donated the most amount of money, more than any other charity, to victims. And that was really big for me, that over 90% of every dollar is going directly to help people. And this is no shot on other charities, but I wanted to make sure that everyone who donated to the cause, that we were getting the most out of the money, and it was going to make the biggest impact. That was very big for me. And then I saw what they did, and I loved some of the missions that they were on, and it was just it just really just felt right with me. And the all those other charities that I talked to, they were all great as well. I just resonated more with Sisters Rising Worldwide, and so I wanted to raise money for them, and it was great, and I loved doing it, and they were awesome the entire way, and so I'm very happy we raised the money for them.
Amazing. So I'm going to throw a quote out there and then I'll ask a question before we continue on with the running. This is from Friedrich Nietzsche. And he said, beware that when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster. For when you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you. And I guess the question is, right, you dedicated this run, a lot of your time, your energy, your life, as well as the work you're doing in law enforcement to fighting monsters. How do you protect yourself from becoming calloused, hardened, um, yeah, dark, even when you're exposing yourself to that fight, on a regular basis?
I think I know exactly who I am. And I've found that out through doing hard things outside of work. And I when I leave work, I have like my non-negotiable. I work out every day, whether it's a run or if I'm going and hitting the cold plunge or if I'm in the sauna. I'm doing something that's gonna be a little bit tough for me every single day that allows me to reset and being able to step away from work. And then one thing I really try to do is not ever bring work home with me. And it's a lot easier said than done, but it's just some of the rules that I've had. And then just have those things, like for me, going and taking a walk to a coffee shop. If I'm really in like struggling, I'll just do that and just kind of reset. Like, hey man, like let me just step away for a little bit and do that. And I think it's very important to find those things that you love to do so that you're always yourself. And listen, I have bad days like everyone does, and I accept that. But I just try to move on and move forward. And I don't let a bad day yesterday affect the day today. Every day is completely new. It's a completely new race.
I I love that. And so to keep moving forward, you start the run. What's the official start date of the run?
March 1st.
Okay, so March 1st, 2024, Santa Monica, California. You set out. Take us through some of the most memorable parts, memorable in positive ways and memorable
Yeah.
in maybe hard, dark, challenging ways
Yeah.
as you cross the country, whatever comes to mind.
Awesome. So we start off, our RV was not ready for us. There was miscommunication with the wrap company. And so we get there, we're ready to pick up the wrap. Someone's telling us that it's ready. We get there, it's not ready. So we did not have the RV for the first, I believe, seven into the eighth day. Now, so we have six guys now living in a out of a 2013 Land Rover LR4 with all of our luggage in it, for those days. And those days were tough. They are so memorable. You remember the tough days more than the good days. But during that time, my body was really struggling because we were just working and trying to figure out what to eat and how my body was going to adapt. And early on, we tried eating healthy like I eat back home. That was a terrible idea because I could not eat enough calories. It was like hard to get over 6,000 calories, and I was burning over 9,000 calories. So we quickly changed up diet, and I was dealing with really bad shin splints early on, where it just having to adapt. And after that part, we were able to keep moving forward, and we ended up running. We got kicked off the interstate one day, and we ended up running through a field full of snakes. And it's just like you're every day you're going to be dealt with new challenges. And it's just really like what I literally just said of like a bad day happening. No matter if the day was good or bad, I did not let it go travel into the next day. Every day was going to be a new day. And I think some of the moments that stand out in Arizona, we were not prepared for the snow, and it snowed because we were up around 9,900 feet of elevation was the highest point, Sitka Reeves National Forest in Arizona. And it snowed for 6 straight days from the end part of Arizona into New Mexico. We weren't ready for it. I'll tell you that. And I'm running on the side of the mountain up a bridge, and the RV ends up getting stuck. They shut down the bridge. So I end up being out there by myself on a day where it's snowing and then it's turning into rain and it's miserable out for around 14 miles by myself. And I'm expecting to see somebody in 4 miles. So mentally it's really tough. And I'm just hoping to see a gas station, something that you can go get warm in. And then none of that stuff happens. And you're just out there and you're out there by yourself. But that day when that happened, I just told myself I got to get 40 miles in today. And the guys were like, "Hey man, like you could be getting sick. Let's change your clothes. Let's just come in. We'll call it a day. We can do half a day. We'll make up the miles." But for me, I just kept telling myself, "Are you the guy you say you are?" And to get those 40 miles in that day, it I knew I was going to complete the run once I got through that day because I truly didn't think it could get much worse than that. The weather conditions were terrible. My shoes would never, none of my clothes could stay dry. It snowed and rained the entire day. It was freezing cold to 40 miles. No one was out there running with me because it was a day where the guys were traveling to go do speaking engagements. So it was literally just me by myself. And that day right there was the turning moment where I knew I'm going to get this run done. And there was no more doubt or questions of, okay, maybe something happened. I was going to finish it. So that day right there will always stand out as a very memorable day throughout the run.
So if we pause there for a second, it's interesting because I was having a conversation with someone earlier today about superpowers. They had asked me, if you could have one superpower, what would it be? And I was tempted to go with fly or invisible or whatever,
Right.
But I took a more serious approach and I said, if I could have the superpower of staying true to my word, no matter what, all of the time, that might be the best superpower I think I could ask for. Do what you say you're going to do, keep your commitments and follow through no matter what. And it sounds like that's the energy that not only you brought to the run, but you bring to your life. And I admire that. I aspire for that. Granted, none of us are perfect, but I think a lot of people listening to this podcast, they're the kind of people that want that as well. So through this run, as you're getting through those hard days, are you feeling more and more confident in yourself that you're able to keep your word no matter what?
Absolutely. And that's, if you ask those guys that came on the run with me why they came on the run, they'll say it's because if I tell them I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I take a lot of pride in that. And I think I get that from my dad. If like I ever asked my dad to do something, I never had to ask him twice, and like when your mom or dad's like, "Why didn't you clean your room? Like I asked you 5 times to do it." It's like, and I always like admired that about my dad and my mom as well. Like if you said like, "Hey, this," like they just got it done. And that was like something that, like you just said, I always wanted to aspire to be. And, so when I say I'm going to do something, that's why I'm very careful. I'm very careful with the words that I say because I want you to believe everything that I say because like there's facts and like, I have this undeniable amount of proof that I am who I say I am. So that is very important to me.
Yeah, there's this phrase, under promise, over deliver, which I love. And you could look at under promise as be careful with what you say, be selective with your words, and then over deliver and show up. And I'll go on a quick tangent, but I just think that the bar is so low in the world we live in to be exceptional. If you just do that, if you just keep your word and you show up and you work hard, you're already in the top 1%. And it's that simple, but it's not easy. So with that being said, so you make it through that incredibly tough day, 40 miles, you're all by yourself. Take us through the rest of the trip and also maybe give us a little bit of orientation to like, how did you actually navigate across the country? It sounds like California, you went south a little bit, Arizona, New Mexico. How did you weave all the way to Central Park?
Yeah, so those days, I mean, we really got messed up early on in the trip, with my body and with the weather as well. California and Arizona in the beginning were super hot. Then it got really cold. In New Mexico, we ended up getting attacked by dogs. It seemed like every other day there. It was it was a mess. And that first, well, one of the poorest town we went through, one of the poorest towns in the country was in New Mexico. And it was sad. And that day was tough. I was running with Marlon and we felt like almost something left us when we entered that town. It was sad. And that was like one of the days where I was like, man, like like, what am I doing out here? When you see some stuff like that, you don't even picture it to be in America. And it was tough to see. So we ended up getting through New Mexico, and we went completely across there and then up through we were in Oklahoma for I think a day, and then into Kansas, and we went through Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, West Virginia, PA, and all that. But that all goes to, we mapped out, but Brandon, the crew chief, man, he was going ahead and making sure the route was safe and all that good stuff. Especially the hard part was like going through Arizona with the Indian reservations, because there's some places where one of the days after Phoenix, I ended up getting stuck out there again because I ended up traveling onto an Indian reservation by accident, and there were no cars or anything allowed there. So the guys were planning to meet me up ahead, and they couldn't, and they got stopped. And they let me go walk through, and usually walking through you're fine, but taking your car on some of these places is not allowed. So that was one of those things where we would get done our run after a 13-hour day, and Brandon might maybe have to go leave to then go travel up ahead. Hey, can we go drive through here? It was a 24-hour around the clock process, but those guys made sure I had everything to when I got up in the morning, all I had to do was think about running. And that helped me out so much.
Yeah. And again, if people are listening and this feels unrelatable, first, I would say we all have people in our lives who help us, who guide us, who are there for us, whether we realize it or not, whether we lean on them or not. And even if you can't think of people in your life right now who you feel like are really there to support you and help you along your way, just think about, to wake up in the morning and to get to where you're going requires so many people. The person who made your alarm, the person who crafted the car or the train or the bus, like all those hundreds of people, thousands of people have helped you get to where you are on any given day. So I think it's important to acknowledge and reemphasize that, it's not a solo journey for you in this, but life is also not a solo endeavor for any of us. And we all need so many other people to help us get to where we're going. So with that being said, was there any point along the way where you questioned whether or not this was doable within the 80-day window?
Early on, those first few days were tough, and I was laying, especially when the diet was all messed up. And at the end of the night, I really had a hard time talking because I was just such at a calorie deficit, and then sleeping was on borderline impossible. I was just waking up drenched in sweat. I couldn't get my body temperature cool enough. So then we were putting ice all over me and dealing with those things, and that was in the first like 3, 4, 5 days because my body was just in such shock. And we're calling everybody that we know. We have a ton of resources, but everyone's trying to help us, and we're trying to find ways on how can we run 40 miles, but then also cool down and get to bed so that we can get 5 hours of sleep to then be able to show up the next day and do the same thing. And when we were in California at that moment, I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking, I'm like, did I bite off more than I could chew here? And I remember like writing in my journal. And I journaled every day, which I would suggest to everybody to do if, just in life, but especially if you're doing something that, you want to be able to go back and remember. It's awesome to be able to look back on that. But I remember writing down, and it's like, this is like, you're really going to be able to figure out a lot about yourself here, Andrew, because this will be the toughest thing you've ever done. And yeah, it surely was. And we definitely got a lot of answers about myself.
Oh yeah. So, all right, I've got two things. One is I second the journaling. I've journaled every day for, I want to say 5, 6, maybe more years at this point. And to your point, it's amazing to be able to look back and see what you were thinking and re-examine or re-experience any given day, any given moment. And some days there's not a whole lot to write. Other days there's a ton. But I think just the act of documenting can be really, really valuable for ourselves and for others. And then the other thing I'll say is I've had these moments throughout my life where I've recognized like, okay, what I do most of the time is live life. I react. And then I look back and try to edit the story afterward to make it make sense for me, or, to fit into my narrative of how I want my life to look like. I'll go back and edit things essentially in my mind. I'll play them differently. I'll piece them together in a way that works. But there have been a select handful of times in my life where I've realized in the moment, hey, this thing sucks. This thing's hard. I don't like how this feels. And I don't have to go back and edit this piece because I have the awareness in this moment that I get to choose how I respond right now. So I'm just going to write it right the first time. And it sounds like you had some of those moments along the way. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I love that. And actually there's a saying from Urban Meyer, the football coach, and he says action plus reaction equals outcome.
Mm,
So like the action, you're never going to be like what the action is whatever happens in life, whatever's happening to you right now. But your reaction to that will ultimately equal the outcome. So like you always have control over the outcome of every situation because of how you're going to respond to every action in life. If you get punched in the face, how you respond to that is going to equal the outcome. And that's really how I try to take effect to it, to a lot of things. And in law enforcement as well, if something happens and let's say we have it on camera, we're able to go back and re-look at that situation where it's like, okay, what maybe like you should have went a different way, or maybe you should have done this. And it's like an after action report. And I think it's very important, like you said, Joe, to be able to look back on that and have an after action report. But when you're in the moment, realize that, okay, I'm getting punched in the face right now, but I get to respond to this and I get to write this story the way I want to. And
mm.
knowing that you have control over the story because it's yours.
Yeah. So well said. And so let's fast forward now. So you're getting toward the end. You ran through Philadelphia, and I was so bummed. I was recording a podcast the night and time that you were running in Philadelphia that I just couldn't get out of. So I missed that. But you run through Philadelphia and eventually you make it to Central Park. I would love to know what it felt like to run those last few miles and any thoughts or emotions that you experienced when you finished.
Yeah. I mean, just getting into Philadelphia was huge. Just being back home and seeing all my family and friends for the first time, and in what was almost 3 months, and the love and the support and being able to run through Philadelphia and having the police escort. And it was amazing, just overwhelmed with emotion and seeing everyone come out. It was amazing. And then especially that last day starting at Fort Lee and those final 8 miles, seeing people come up from DC, from that my coworkers, all the people who came out to just run. And how many people never ran 8 miles before, but showed up to run the final 8 miles with me for this amazing cause and finish like together. That was the coolest part of it all, Joe. Like so many people never ran 8 miles before and they're struggling. They're just like, I'm going to do this. And it was the coolest thing to see everyone just like push through and just be resilient. Now, it was a warm day and they're like, I'm getting this thing done. I showed up. If you were able to do 40 miles a day, I'm able to do these 8 miles. And that was hearing the stories of my friends and stuff that never ran 8 miles and then did that. That's a lifetime I'll never forget. And that's one of the coolest things of the entire run.
That sounds so, so special. And, it's a testament to you, but it's also an encouragement to everyone listening, right? Even if you think no one's watching, the things that we do matter. And when we push ourselves, when we do hard things, when we strive for more, for better, for what's right, it eventually ripples out and it does impact other people. And I can't even begin to imagine the amount of people that you inspired with this journey. And to have that in such a tangible, kind of up close package for your last day, for your last 8 miles must have been so, so cool. And so you run into New York City, you eventually get to Central Park and you cross the finish line. What,
Yeah.
what goes through your mind?
I was just proud of myself, proud of my team that we got done what we said we were going to do. We said we were going to finish May 18th. We did that. We raised over $111,000 for charity in that time frame, and we just kept all the commitments we made to each other. And then to see everybody, people from all walks of my life, and all connecting and sharing stories of come maybe they came out and visited me during the run or whatever. It was just it was an amazing moment, but so proud of the team because it took an army to do this. And everyone helped out. Yes, those guys who were on the RV with me, but also the people back home who were helping with everything as well. And it just it was awesome that we all got to celebrate that together, and just we completed it.
Yeah, you definitely did. And so it's done. You, I hope, get some good sleep, maybe eat some good food, you recover a bit. It's a very natural thing when there's a high in life to feel a bit of a low right on the other side. Did you experience any of that coming down from the high of the finish?
Yeah, it wasn't. First off, I had so many great people reach out to me and just make sure they were checking in on me after that. I really took time to not. I didn't rush back into work, and I didn't rush back into running or posting on social media. I kind of just took a break, and that was very important for me to do. And I just kind of stepped away from everything and spent time with my family and with my loved ones, and just relaxed for a little bit. And I think that played a major role in my mental health staying all right and being good, and for me feeling well, like throughout that entire time. And I didn't put any pressure on myself like, oh dude, you got to go run today, or you got to go do this, or whatever. It was just like, oh, I want to go get coffee this morning, I'm gonna go get coffee. Oh, I want to go to the gym, I'll go to the gym. But I didn't worry about posting it, I didn't worry about talking to anybody else or doing anything. I just wanted to relax and just be me. And I think that was a key part. It helped me, right? And that might not be great for everybody, but one thing for me was just to spend time with, my family and friends and just enjoy life.
I think a lot of people, me included, can learn from that. And I appreciate you sharing. And so, this podcast is the Project Endure podcast. What you did was an incredible feat of endurance. When you hear the word endurance, what does that mean to you?
Endurance to me is more longevity. It's you're willing to push through situations that might take longer than expected. It's realizing that this pain or maybe this problem that's in your life right now is not going to get over in a snap of your fingers. It's going to take a little while. And you need mental endurance, you need physical endurance, you need emotional endurance, you need spiritual endurance. And it's just being able to continue to push forward for a long period of time and be willing to say suffer, but just go through all of it. You have to accept everything that comes with it. And to me, that's what endurance really is.
Mm. What comes next for you now that this is done?
Yeah, so right now I'm getting my body back together. I'm gonna do a 12-hour race on August 3rd, the Loop de Looper. I did it last year, so I'll do that again. We have a few marathons to end the year, and then I will be hiking Mount Kilimanjaro in December with the 15-pound weighted vest. Gonna go have some fun over there, and yeah, we're gonna plan something for next year. But I'm taking a little bit of a break from something that's this big, and take some time to kind of just have some fun, and then we'll do something that'll be fun. But until I know that, I don't want to say something. But we have some ideas that we're working on logistics for, so
Yeah.
it'll be
Well,
good.
you deserve the time to do some things that you want to do. And, before we get to the last question of the podcast, I want to share one more quote. And I share this because you did something hard in support of people who are facing something hard that they don't get to choose, right? You wore the vest as a symbol of carrying a burden and a weight that these people can't shake, right? And you got to take that vest off when you were done. And they don't. And there's this great quote from Damian Lillard who said, in response to a question about the pressure that he feels being on the basketball court, playing in these high stake games, he said, pressure, nah, this is just playing basketball. Pressure is the homeless man who doesn't know where his next meal is coming from. And I think in a lot of ways, chosen pain or chosen suffering or chosen struggle, it's such a privilege. And I know without even asking you the question that you would agree with that. And I'm wondering what went through your mind during all of the struggle, all of the pain in relation to the people that you were doing this for, right? Was there hey, this isn't that bad. Like I can do this because I'm choosing this and they have it worse mentality. What did that look like?
There's two things that I continue to say, and I completely agree with you first, but two things I continue to tell myself every day was that one, at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to put my head on that pillow. I literally just have to get through like 13 hours of running. And at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to take a shower and put my head on that pillow. And then number two was, no matter like that day when it was snowing and raining and I was miserable the entire time, if you told somebody that was in that situation and they were being human trafficked, that all they had to do was run 40 miles through the mountains of Arizona in the snow, in the rain, be freezing cold, they would set Olympic times. They would do it 10 times over. And that just pushed me every single day that, okay, this is not as tough. Like, what are you doing this for, Andrew? And that constantly kept me balanced and kept me leveled and helped me a lot.
That gave me the chills. Cause you're right. You're absolutely right. And so with all that being said, right, there are people listening to this podcast who are all over the world going through all different kinds of things. Some of them they chose and some of them they didn't. And whoever it is, whatever they're going through, if they just need some encouragement and you get to say whatever it is that you want to say to people going through hard things right now, what would you say?
I would say that you are, you are your own character and your story, and how you perceive yourself is very important on how, the things that you'll receive in life.
Mm.
And that you might be going through some really tough things. But if you never believe in yourself that you can get out of those tough things, you never will.
Mm.
But if you continue to tell yourself that you can do it and that you got to believe in yourself. And I think that I may believe in myself to a fault at sometimes, but I'd rather believe in myself than not believe in myself, because, especially when you're down and out and there's nobody in your corner, there's nobody to believe in you, there's no one to pat you on the back. You got to be able to believe that you can get out of the situation and that you can make the change and you can make the impact on the world that you want to make. So find out who you are as a person, continue to push forward, and never stop believing in yourself.
So powerful. Before I tell people where to follow along and connect with you, did you send anything to your high school football coach after you finished the cross country?
No, no,
I'm sure he
no.
saw.
Yeah. No, it's all good stuff. I still have that, I'll forever have that enemy in my mind, but there's some things better left unsaid.
Well said. Well said. So if people do want to follow along, see some of the content that you posted during the trip, during the journey, or just reach out and connect, where's the best place for people to do that?
Yeah, Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok. Everything is Andrew at Andrew M. Linder on all social media. If you send me a DM, I'd love to chat with you about anything. You have any questions about maybe running or anything like that, I'd love to talk to you. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. The pleasure's all mine. I will link all of that below. And seriously, thank you for not only sharing your time and this conversation with me and with the audience, but for the way you show up. And I'm excited to link up at some point for a run, because I feel like we could have this conversation for hours more.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, Joe. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.